Welcome to CvilleRightNow.com. We're here at Disharoon Park today because Coach Chris Pollard has very graciously made some time for us in the midst of roster construction. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We're going to talk about his coaching style, the kind of team that he is building, and what Virginia baseball is looking like in 2025. So let's go talk to Coach. All right, Coach. So we'll start out nice and light here. You're no stranger around here. You mentioned in the introductory press you're taking some vacations here. Obviously, you've played in this ballpark before. How has the adjustment period been to living in Charlottesville?
Well, living in Charlottesville has been great. I can't tell you how many great restaurants my wife and I have eaten at just in the short time that we've been here. Love the area. Candidly, wish that would have had more time to explore the area, but the primary focus has been roster rebuild and recruitment, and that's where the lion's share of my energy and our staff's energy has gone.
Okay. Well, you answered the second question straight off, so you're still very much in the roster building phase. I mean, can you give us a percentage as to where you're at in that process?
Yeah, 99.9%.
Wow, okay, yeah, so you almost done. 2 weeks seconds.
We would be comfortable moving forward with the roster as is. It would not hurt my feelings if a left-handed pitcher fell out of the sky and wound up on our roster. And so, we are excited about the way the rosters come together. I really like this group positionally. I think there is a immense amount of upside from a pitching standpoint. But there's also a good deal of inexperience there as well. So I think this fall will be a really fun time to kind of sort through and see how things come together.
No doubt. All right, let's get into what I want this interview to focus on really, and that is you and your relationship to the game and kind of the Chris Pollard way of baseball, as it were. So you grew up in Amherst, high school ball in Lynchburg, and then college ball for Davidson. Under Dick Cooke. We'll get into that here imminently. But when you were playing, what position did you play? How did you play the game? And kind of what was your relationship to the game before you became a coach?
Yeah, growing up in Amherst, aspired to be a three-sport athlete, right? So it was baseball in the spring, it was basketball in the winter, and then at times it was football in the fall. It was really early on, it was soccer in the fall, ran some cross country. But as I got into high school, I realized that if I were going to have an opportunity as an athlete to pursue college athletics, it was most likely going to be in baseball. And so started to create more of a focus around training specifically for baseball with the intention of hopefully having an opportunity to go and play at the next level, and was really blessed to get that opportunity at Davidson College.
Sure.
There were so many great things about my experience at Davidson, from an awesome degree to making so many friendships for life, playing for a great man and mentor. But obviously the best thing that happened to me at Davidson was meeting my wife.
Very, very well said. And speaking from somebody who met their wife in baseball too, I mean, it's the greatest game on the planet Earth. Just as a little aside here, from one God-fearing man to another, what role has the Almighty played in getting you to
I appreciate that, man. I was blessed to grow up in Amherst Baptist Church, and I had a dad who was always really involved as a deacon, and two grandfathers that were involved as deacons. They were leaders in that church, and so that's been a part of my life since the earliest memories that I have. And really fortunate that I came from a family where that was stressed. Both of my grandparents, passed that on to my mom and dad. And they passed that along to me and my siblings, and we're grateful for having that opportunity to grow up in a household where faith was always at the center.
All right. Well, let's talk about Coach Cooke here. For those who might not know, the winningest and longest serving coach in the history of Davidson baseball. Talk about the way that he imprinted on you, both as a person, as a player, and then later as a coach.
Yeah, I mean, learned so much from playing under Coach Cooke. about the game. That's where I really learned how to play the game and understand the game at a higher level. But the most important thing that I learned from Dick Cooke was the importance of work-life balance. He has such made such an impression upon me and all my teammates with how he integrated his family into his coaching style, and the way he did that, and the grace with which he did that really sort of gave me permission to get into coaching. Right, family was going to be really important to me. Watching Coach Cooke and the way he brought his family along for the ride really said to me that, hey, you can do this coaching thing and work really hard at it and still have the type of family balance that you want to have.
So his kids were around to practice.
Oh
a lot.
my
What
gosh,
did that look like?
I can remember, his oldest, Allison, who is a coach herself now. She coaches volleyball at Bowling Green University. When I was a student athlete at Davidson, she was a toddler, and I can remember practice finishing and Susan standing over there with Allison, waiting for practice to be over. She would run out, jump on the three-wheeler with Coach Cooke, and she would ride the three-wheeler while he drug the field at the end of practice. And you don't think a lot about that when you're an 18-year-old. But man, as you step away now, looking back, you realize the impact that it had and the impression that it made on you.
And you've carried that on, I'm sure, because your sons, I'm sure, have grown up.
Yeah, those two have just grown up in the sport.
Beside you.
Yeah, and I give my wife so much credit because when my oldest Thomas was about probably 10 or 11, he was starting to press to be a bat boy. And I kept holding off and saying, you're not ready for that, and I'm not ready for that either. And she finally convinced me that, hey, you just need to do this and have fun with it and stop taking yourself too seriously. And I will look back, when my coaching career is over, on those years where Thomas and Brady were in the dugout with me, from ACC tournaments to regionals and super regionals, all the bus rides. Those were some of the most fun times I've ever had in the sport.
Well, let's get technical here, because I'm curious. Not a lot of people watching, I'm sure, unless folks from North Carolina maybe have watched a whole lot of Davidson baseball under Coach Cooke. Mechanically and tactically, what kind of baseball did you guys play? Did Coach Cooke play, and what have you taken from him into your own style?
Yeah, I'm smiling because Coach Cooke didn't like to bunt. and if he had a chance to win a close ball game late in the game, he was going to let his hitter swing away, and that left an impression on me. I think you don't try to micromanage the game. It's a player's game. It's a player's sport. You empower your guys to go out there and make plays. Right. From a pitching standpoint, he was all about commanding the strike zone and owning the leverage of the count. So. First pitch strikes and 2 out of the first 3 in the zone. And his big mantra was you want to get guys in and out of the batter's box as quickly as possible. Sure. And even to this day, I still use that exact same phrase with our pitchers.
How quick was the hook with guys coming out of the bullpen? Obviously, that might depend on the guy-to-guy situation, but is there a general kind of time, as it were, that a pitcher had before he was yanked out?
Yeah, well, so we didn't have great depth at Davidson, being a mid-major and being limited on scholarships. So, Coach did what any coach in that situation would do. He rode his best arms. So, I famously have some pitch counts during my junior and senior year at Davidson that were up in the 140s and 150s. As a starter, I had a start versus UNC Asheville in 1996 where I had 167 pitches in one outing. We don't do that anymore.
No.
I would wind up on social media if I left a pitcher in that long nowadays. It's funny because we've sort of earned this reputation over the last few years of being the opposite end of the spectrum and rarely letting a guy get to 100 pitches. In fact, we had gone through close to a 3-year stretch at Duke where we hadn't had a pitcher reach the 100 pitch threshold. We've tended to use more openers and more bullpen types of outings, and rarely do we let a pitcher get much past 2 times through a batting order.
So that's the way the roster's shaping up, I'm sure, too. Is this going to be a trend that you're going to see into the 2025 team?
I think it will. I think our 25-26 squad will have to embrace that type of mentality where, you put a guy out there, you let him sprint one time through the lineup, and then he turns it over to the next guy. I think we can do that effectively too because we've got a lot of power arms. I'm definitely not opposed to traditional starters, guys that can get you 3 times through a lineup. A guy you put out there and you don't come get him till the 6th inning.
Sure, but they're harder to find.
They're hard to find, and they're harder to find in today's game. And so I think we may be a little bit unconventional again this year in how we attack opponents.
Interesting. Okay. Well, talked about Coach Cooke's tactics, but obviously you've done plenty of coaching in between the start of your career and now. As your style of baseball has developed, what does a Chris Pollard team need to win baseball games?
And I don't say this to sound funny at all, but we need to score more runs than our opponent. And that ultimately at the end of the day, like that's all that matters. Right. And so we try to really embrace a mentality that it doesn't matter how you get the job done, just as long as you get the job done. I've said over the years many times to our teams, there are no pretty points. So there's no style points in wins. Like, did you score more runs than your opponent or not? And so inevitably in college baseball, you have to be able to win a lot of different ways. Right. You're going to win some 4-3 ball games, some traditional, well-pitched, well-defended, quote-unquote clean games. But you've got to be able to, if you're going to post a 35-40 win season and have a chance to host a regional, then you better win some ugly games too. You've got to be able to win the 14-13 game. You've got to be able to kick some balls and still figure out a way to come out on the other side of it. So ultimately it's about like having the competitive makeup and the competitive fire to win in a lot of different ways. Right.
Well, speaking of ways to win, we're talking a little bit about analytics now. Obviously there are a number of different ways that coaches in this game approach the sheer volume of data that is available. I mean, you can plan everything pretty much down to the letter, but except for maybe the 9th inning, of course. But what is your kind of balance that you're hoping to strike with the data that's available? For lack of a better term, we'll call it old school versus the new school kind of baseball.
Yeah. At a place like the University of Virginia, where you get really smart, really analytical student athletes, they want to understand the why. Right. They want to know the why, the reasoning behind a mechanical adjustment, or why they're going to throw a certain pitch in a certain count, or why when I swing at that pitch in that part of the zone, I have more success. And so to be able, what data does is data helps us with the why. Right. And what we have to be careful of is we can't get so caught up in the data and that we drown in the numbers. Right. It can't be paralysis by analysis. And so I think our job as coaches is to understand each unique individual and how they like to process that data. Sure. Some guys are going to want a lot of it. Some guys are not going to want very much at all. And then of the guys that do want to know a lot of the data and the reasoning why, it's making sure that they don't get so caught up in that they forget to go out there and compete.
Yeah, exactly. So opposite end of the spectrum, you spoke in your introductory presser using a really interesting phrase talking about knowing your guys as human beings before you try to coach them as players. But traditionally, and I don't know if you've probably seen Bull Durham in your travels, but don't think it'll only hurt the ball club. I know that's kind of part of a school of thought in this ball game. Where do you land on that? I mean, do you think you can you bring who you are as a person into the way you play a team sport like baseball? And if so, what is the benefit of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yes, I want guys to be able to allow their personality to come out when they're on the field. It makes them a better version of themselves. when guys try to go out on the field and be somebody they're not, they lose that authenticity, and they're not as productive as they could be.
Right.
And so different guys are going to manifest their passion and their energy and their intensity and their emotion in different ways. I love stoicism, and I love studying the Stoics.
Sure.
I love Marcus Aurelius, and if you've studied Stoicism isn't the absence of emotion; it's the control of emotion. So we want guys to understand that, hey, emotion is a part of this. You've got a tremendous investment in what you're doing out here. So all of that is real, but we just want to be able to manage that and use that emotion, use that energy, use that intensity, use that passion in a way that promotes the most productive parts of ourself and doesn't allow us to let emotion get in the way of productivity.
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate the Marcus Aurelius mention. I'm a big fan myself. Can we expect meditations to be required reading in fall ball?
Well, I love meditations, and I've read it. Our strength coach at Duke shared it with me, and it's made an impact on my coaching career. I love for our guys to read, and I love shared readings. So we'll absolutely have some times throughout the year where we kind of do a book club and
Awesome.
and dive into some areas of self-improvement. Over the years, everything from James Clear's Atomic Habits to Trevor Moawad's It Takes What It Takes. I love when guys dive into a book together and then discuss it and talk about takeaways that they can make applicable to becoming a better version of themselves.
Well, to alleviate the risk of a potentially very fun but time-consuming digression, can you share maybe an anecdote from your career as a coach where this approach has been particularly effective?
Well, you've heard me reference the importance of vulnerability, right? And we talk about it in terms of vulnerability-based trust. To reference another great read, Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. He talks about vulnerability-based trust being a deeper level of trust, and we've started to really create platforms, create environments where our players are more comfortable sharing with each other, and it all stems from a very powerful coaching moment that I had in 2017. And I'll make a long story more brief. We had a young man making his collegiate debut. He was a redshirt freshman. This is a young man that didn't pitch at all as a true freshman. He's now making his debut in his redshirt freshman season. It's a late in a lopsided game. We're about to win a lopsided midweek contest. He comes in, we're probably up 10 runs in a Wednesday game. And I thought, man, our team is going to absolutely erupt when he takes the mound. If you know his backstory, you couldn't be anything but excited and thrilled for that moment. And there was not the reaction that I expected. And let me go back. This young man, his father had passed away from ALS in his junior year of high school. His father had been his coach and pitching coach really throughout his entire baseball life. They were very close. And so, he had dedicated his college career to his dad and to his dad's memory. And what that moment taught me was that his teammates didn't know. They didn't know his backstory. Because if you knew that backstory, you wouldn't be anything but thrilled and pumped for him to have that moment. And it was a powerful lesson in my coaching career that we have to create environments where guys are comfortable sharing their backstory. We can't make assumptions that these 18, 19, 20-year-old men are going to openly share their history, their life story with each other. And so we've got to create a space where guys feel comfortable to do that with each other. And so we really have been more intentional over the past 7 or 8 years about creating environments where guys open up and share with each other, because it does foster a deeper level of trust and commitment to one another.
Absolutely. I'm curious to know that man's name when we wrap up here. But pertaining to this year's team and this space that you're hoping to create, perhaps maybe using that lens of who they are as men. Across the transfer portal, you brought in four, for lack of a better term, big position players. Most of them that you coached at Duke: Harris, Murray, Gracia, and Joe Tarola. Right. Can you share with us kind of the kinds of players that they are in your eyes? What do you like about their abilities, and what the fans can expect from them in the 2025
Yeah,
season?
for sure. Well, first and foremost, those four guys can really hit. You're talking about guys that really have a chance to feature in the middle of an ACC lineup and be really productive offensive players. I think if there's a commonality amongst that group, it's high bat to ball skills, it's gap to gap power with the ability to drive the ball out of the ballpark. There's athleticism there, where they're guys that can steal a base, they can go first to third on a base hit. And so I think all four of those guys really have a unique ability to be run producers for us.
Right. Ditto for the pitching group, if you'd be so kind. Willius, Jackson, Stamble, Zakowski, and Johnson.
Yeah, you've got some left-handers there that can fill up the zone.
Yep.
Henry Zakowski is a really elite strike thrower. We talked earlier in this conversation about the need for left-handed pitching, and all of those guys are going to be important in kind of filling that left-handed pitching void that had existed on the roster when I got here in June.
Sure.
Would we love to have a little more right-left balance than what we do right now? Yeah, we would. But at the same time, we've got some right-handed arms with really what I call big arm talent, guys with premium stuff. And if they can harness it, and those guys can complement what I think this group of left-handers can do, then I think we'll create some balance amongst our staff.
Chris Pollard, our guest here on CvilleRightNow.com. Just before we wrap up here, we're going to go kind of to the larger landscape. The house settlement dropping not too long after you got here, if memory serves. How's that impacted your operations here, especially with it breaking towards the end of the recruiting process?
Yeah, so the house settlement was signed just 5 days before I took the job. So it was signed on the Friday, and I took the job on Tuesday. For us, it's been a blessing because it's opened up the door for more scholarships in college baseball, and the University of Virginia has, committed more scholarship dollars to the sport since the settlement, and it's honestly been a lot of fun to sit down with families and have those conversations and not feel like, man, we're just nickel and diming everybody. When you had 11.7 scholarships for a roster of 35 or 40 players, you felt like every time you had that conversation, you were trying to inevitably convince a player to commit for the least amount of money that you possibly could, right? That because you were stretching it so thin, right? Now the ability to sit down with a family and really put them in a position where this incredible opportunity at the University of Virginia, both academically and athletically, is now so much more financially within reach for them as a family. That's a really cool conversation to have.
Sure. Well, touched on the financing, but also, I guess on the other side of it, you got more guys coming out of these top schools that are near MLB ready now more than ever. In your eyes, what does the future of college baseball look like in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think over the next 5 years, Power 4 college baseball continues to evolve even more so into the feeder system for Major League Baseball. I'm not sure I agree with this, but inevitably there's going to be more contraction in minor league baseball.
Yeah.
Right?
Who agrees with that?
I don't think in the overall health and well-being of the sport, it's a good thing. I think when you're losing these small town affiliates, I worry about what that does for baseball development in those communities.
Yeah.
But what it means is Power 4 baseball becomes even more of a feeder, straight line, a straight pipeline to Major League Baseball, even more so than it is right now. And you think about guys who have gotten to the big leagues in their draft summer, right? You're seeing this happen more and more, or within one calendar year of being drafted. I think that trend is just going to continue more and more in our sport, because you see so many of those guys that have done that, they've had success.
Yeah.
And so why are you going to leave a guy in the minor leagues for 3 or 4 years if you don't have to? You get a better return on your investment by getting that guy to the big leagues more quickly.
Sure. All right. Coming to the end of our time here on CvilleRightNow.com. In your words, addressing fans watching this, what is going to get them into the stadium this year?
Well, it's a bunch of things. Number one, we play in such a great league. So this is such a really high-level brand of college baseball. The ACC is deep as it's ever been. And so week in and week out, man, this is a fun environment of college baseball. We're going to play an aggressive style that is built around effort. It's built around energy. It's built around a process-driven approach. They're going to see a group of guys out there on the field that play the game with gratitude, that are risk takers. If we make mistakes, and we're going to make a bunch of them, and we're going to make them every ball game, but we should be making them aggressively. And I think it will be a fun group to watch. I think specifically and tangibly, to answer your question, this could be a team that puts a lot of runs across the plate. And so that's always fun to come out to the ballpark and see teams plate runs. And so I think this team has got a chance to be a really good offensive club.
Now, finally here, for full transparency's sake, I've sent these questions to Coach Pollard ahead of time, so he had the chance to prep as is professional convention dictating. This last one here, I'm very curious to know if you prep for, but I'll tell you ahead of time that it has no wrong answer. Every person I've ever asked this to, on camera or otherwise, has had a different answer to it. But I'll go ahead and not beat around the bush at all and ask you, Chris Pollard, why baseball?
Yeah, it's a great question. When you sent the questions, I had a chance to read the questions. I thought this was a really cool question. Baseball, outside of my family and my faith, baseball has been the largest factor in my life. So many friendships and relationships because of the sport. And also, I think baseball specifically, I think a lot of sports are great for developing relationships and learning how to work in a team dynamic. But baseball, above all, you've heard the analogy a million times, it's a game of failure. But it is an unbelievable sport to teach you how to manage adversity, to deal with getting knocked to the mat and having to get back up, to take a punch and keep moving forward. And I just think baseball is such a great game to prepare you for life.
Oh, yeah.
So, for me, really blessed to be in the sport all these years.
Well, exceptionally well said, but I didn't expect anything less. That's going to do it for us here on CvilleRightNow.com. Coach, best of luck in fall ball.
Oh, man.
We'll be seeing you.
Appreciate it. We'll see you here in just a couple of weeks.
Yes, indeed.